Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. Jay Hoffman is serving his first term as state representative of the Illinois 113th District. He previously served as the representative of the Illinois 112th District from January 1991 to January 97, and from October of 97 until January 2011. During his career in public service, Jay Hoffman helped to pass two major multi-billion-dollar capital construction plans. Mr. Hoffman has said his current top concerns are strengthening public safety, improving job growth and economic development, providing educational opportunities, making Illinois the leader in research and production of alternative energy, and balancing the state budget. He is also the author of Hope from the Heartland, Jobs, Clean Air, Energy Security, outlines how the Midwest can lead the nation in research and production of alternative energy by utilizing the Midwest state's natural resources to create jobs in the declining manufacturing center. Jay Hoffman, welcome to Conversation. Good to see you again.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Well, not that long.
Yeah.
I actually looked it up, and you're one of the guests that have been here the most.
Oh, really?
Over
Good.
the years, yeah.
Good.
You started coming, I think your first time here was like way back in, was it 04?
It's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, so
I've always enjoyed it.
And this show, we've been doing this, we're almost to our 13th year.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, in January it'll be 13 years. So, yeah, you've been with, I think, 9-10 times now.
A lot of water under the bridge, right?
Yeah, well, a lot of stuff has happened, and, I just read all that stuff about, what you've done, what you're interested in. But what I really want to know is, seriously, you know and I know that Illinois has some very serious issues going on. Your party, the Democrat Party, is the vast majority party in the state of Illinois. Republicans have very little to say about what's going on. So it's really up to your party to make some decisions that are going to save Illinois from absolute financial disaster. What's your thinking on this matter?
Well, first of all, going back to our history, you're right. I've been on the show many times, but after 2010 election, I was out of office for 2 years. So
right.
I was in the private sector working, and
you're an attorney.
Yeah, I'm an attorney. So
right.
I was doing that and really enjoying it, kind of stepping away and being able to look from the outside, looking in as
a regular citizen.
As a citizen. But I decided that I wanted to go back. And the reason I decided I wanted to go back is I didn't believe that the people who were in Springfield were making the tough decisions that need to be made in order to get, number one, our fiscal house in order, number two, create jobs and economic opportunity, but as importantly, no real vision for how we're going to move forward here in Illinois. Do we have to get our fiscal house in order? Do we have to make tough and difficult financial decisions? Yes, we do. But while we do that, we should have some long-term planning as to how we're going to get our fiscal house in order and how we're going to put Illinois on the right track, creating jobs and opportunity for people who live here in Illinois.
Right, okay, and what conclusions have you come to then?
Well, for the first time this year, this budget year, we actually began to pay and significantly pay some of our past due bills. Do we still owe a lot of money? Yes, we do.
There's some enormous amount, like some $3 billion that vendors they've actually given the state either goods or services for which they have yet to be paid.
Well, it isn't only vendors, it's people who provide health care to Medicaid patients, people who provide health care.
I'm including them as vendors.
Right, and so people who sell
doctors, nurses,
hospitals,
pharmacists.
Nursing homes. And so we, number one, need to pay them in a timely, reasonable fashion. So I thought it was so important that we begin to pay some of our back due bills. We this year are paying over about $1.8 billion in back due bills. We still have a payment cycle that's 4 or 5 months out. It takes 4 or 5 months from the time that someone provides services to the time that they get paid. That's too long. And we're basically asking the providers of healthcare, the people who sell things to the state, the people who build things for the state, to actually finance state government. That's not right when you're trying to be when you're a small business or even a large business trying stay in business.
Well,
So,
don't most attorneys usually collect their fees up front before they wind up in court?
well, you try to, right? You try to. And I
Right,
agree with you. Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can understand if I were a pharmacist and I had provided drugs to, or or if I was a nursing home, and then now I'm waiting, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, 180 days. That hurts.
Well, because you have to pay your vendor.
Exactly.
So you're buying goods and
you got to
services.
pay your
from somebody.
employees, and you got to pay your taxes.
Exactly.
So it's kind of difficult.
Yeah, we don't
I'm
waive
surprised
the-
that people actually still do business.
Right. So, number one, I think we have to get a handle on our past due bills, and we have made strides towards that. And as we see more jobs and us get out of the doldrums that the economy has been in, and we make very difficult financial decisions by holding the line on spending, we'll be able to get there. But we also have to address really the elephant in the room for state government is the pension crisis that we're facing.
Yes.
We in the state of Illinois in the early mid 80s, sometimes in the early 90s, we didn't pay our side of the pension payment. So teachers, firefighters, people who work in the Department of Corrections, state police, they would pay their payment into their pensions, but we wouldn't pay ours.
Right.
So over time, as the stock market has gone down, and over time we've seen literally hundreds of billions of dollars that are owed in past due pensions. So in 1995, I actually was fairly new to the Illinois General Assembly. We actually passed a bill that said we're going to pay these past due amounts, and we're going to have it paid up by 2045. We have been making those payments recently, but in between we skipped some of those payments. So we have to address that issue. There are proposals that are being put forward, that have been put forward, that would address the issue. My feeling is we shouldn't be doing it on the backs of teachers. We shouldn't be doing it on the backs of police officers.
What do you mean by on the backs?
Well, some of the proposals would, I believe, be overly punitive to the people who have served the state, people who are already retired, and teachers who may have been teaching for 30 years who now are getting ready to retire, and now you're saying, you've paid in, you put your time in, you've done your part, the state unfortunately hasn't done its part, and we're going to deduct and we're going to take away some of your benefits. So I think that
pause there just for a second. As you know, the city of Detroit is in a worse position than the state of Illinois is. And because they're in a worse position, I've heard stories that it could be 4 cents on the dollar. That's what people will wind up getting,
Right.
including pensioners. So I can understand where you might want to be very concerned, and this 30-year teacher might be very concerned as
Right.
well if Illinois winds up in a similar condition.
And if you were to talk to teachers, and I've talked to a lot of them, or other employees that may be under these pension programs that the state provides, they would say that their number one issue is the stability of the fund. So they understand that there has to be some pain. They understand that there may have to be more paid in. Yet you want to do this in a fair manner. Number one, our Constitution, the Illinois Constitution of 1970, specifically guarantees that you can't diminish a pension value. You cannot take away something that has already been earned. So a teacher who has earned that pension is clearly unconstitutional. Has been ruled 4 times by the Illinois Supreme Court that you can't just take away that earned benefit. So we should, number one, pass something that's constitutional. It doesn't do anybody any good to pass something, say we've solved a problem, but we really haven't solved it because it's going to be declared unconstitutional. So there's really 3 things that I think have to happen in order to reform the system. Number one, it has to be constitutional. Number 2, it needs to stabilize the system. It has to actually do something. It has to make sure that it's going to guarantee that the pension funds become solvent. And then number 3, we shouldn't just be passing on the state's obligation onto local governments in the form of increased property taxes. That doesn't do anybody any good because we're not really solving a problem. We're creating a greater problem by increasing the burden on property taxes. So there are a lot of proposals that have been out there. Some that would solve the problem and are constitutional. Some, I believe, are unconstitutional. So right now, as we speak, there is a work group with 3 members from each caucus, 3 from the House Democrats, 3 from the House Republicans, 3 from the Senate Democrats, 3 from the Senate Republicans, that have been appointed to a conference committee that have been having hearings throughout the summer, and I'm hopeful by early fall or late summer we'll have something in place that will address this issue and do it in a fair manner to the people who have actually given us services, who paid into the system, and now we're asking them to make a sacrifice.
Well, not to point fingers, but here I go anyways.
Go ahead.
Mr. Madigan, your colleague and friend, has been the speaker since 1970 something or 80 something.
Yeah. Way before I was elected.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And that's why I'm not pointing the finger at you. I'm saying that he's the speaker, he's the boss, and I have yet to hear a program being put forward from his office to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. You know, follow me. I'm the leader. I thought that's what leaders are supposed to do, is like, follow me, here we're going this way.
Right. Well, actually, the Illinois House did pass. It was Senate Bill 1, passed out of the Illinois House with 60 votes. I voted against it because I believe it's unconstitutional and unfair to some of the people who taught and worked for the state. It did actually pass the House, or a bill, over to the Senate, but it only got 13 votes in the Senate. Mm-hmm. The Senate passed a bill, which I'm the sponsor of in the House, that passed with, I believe, 42 or 43 votes in the Senate. I believe would pass the House. Mm-hmm. That would solve the problem as well. Now, and I believe it's constitutional.
Just sketch an outline of what the solution looks like to you.
So the solution, I believe, is you cannot just diminish a person's benefits. You can't do it. It's clear under the Constitution and under judicial precedent. Now, it's all very boring and mundane, but it's a fact. What this proposal would do is essentially give an employee a choice. You have a choice between either having long-term health care when you retire or getting cost of living increases. So it's a consideration model. You choose one over the other. There's no constitutional guarantee that we provide retirees with health care. Yet, historically, Illinois, as well as many school districts, have provided, when you're retired, some sort of health care until you get to Medicare.
When you're rich, as America was, it's easy to offer all these freebies and bennies to your employees. But when you stop being rich, suddenly it's like, holy cow, where are we going to be? How are we going to be able to fulfill these promises that we've made? Which,
in retrospect, if you look what Illinois did, by number one, not living up to its obligations to pay into the fund.
Right, exactly.
I mean, the state government failed. It wasn't the individuals who paid into the fund that failed. Yet, we're going to have to ask them to pay more into the pension fund, which many of their organizations that represent them have agreed to do. So this bill would pay more into the pension fund. It would provide for a constitutional mechanism in order to reduce some of the cost of living benefits that add up over time when a person is retired. And in addition, it would guarantee the stabilization of the fund. Mm-hmm. So I've called on the speaker, and you brought him up, I've called him to call that bill in the Illinois House, yet he's elected to wait for this conference committee, see what can come of a bipartisan committee coming together and trying to have an agreed bill that could pass the Illinois House and the Illinois Senate.
And have you heard any rumors out of this committee?
Well, every day in the paper you read rumors.
No, I mean, have you heard? I mean, you're there. You know the persons who are involved in this.
And
I'm not asking you to tell me what they're saying. I'm just saying, are you hearing anything that you find better than what you just described?
I think that there are some proposals that have been put out by like the universities, economists at the universities, that have some merit. Now, the specifics of those, I'm not a pension expert, and they're actually getting the numbers run to figure out whether they actually solve the problem. I've been in contact, though, with Republicans and Democrats on that committee, and I've tried to make my position known of the three things that I believe are important, and I kind of went through them. Number one, constitutionality. Number two, it has to stabilize the system. And number three, we shouldn't just be passing on a burden to the state, to local governments. Those are broad, mm-hmm. and within each of those, there's many components. But I've been in contact and went to the initial hearings. They no longer are having public hearings. They're beginning to meet in private in order to look at some of these numbers. It's very, as I said, mundane. It's very complicated, and the experts are being brought into the room, and we're trying to eventually come to a solution.
The creation of more wealth in the state of Illinois would solve a lot of problems, wouldn't it?
Well,
You
yes.
wrote a book, which I spoke about in the introduction, in which you were hoping that there would be more concentration on alternative energies with more employment in those areas. Why don't you describe what your thinking was there?
So my belief is that all you have to do is drive through Illinois and you can see the natural resources that exist, whether it's corn that makes ethanol. We're, I believe, the #2 producer of corn in the nation. Soybeans that make biodiesel fuels. We're, I believe, second or third right now in the production of soybeans that make that can produce biodiesel fuels in the nation. We have some of the greatest universities in the nation, research universities like the University of Illinois. We have the corn to ethanol research plant right under our noses at
Within a few miles of this here spot.
Exactly, at SIU Edwardsville, that's doing groundbreaking research on what's called cellulosic ethanol. There's always this debate about whether or not when you use corn to make ethanol, whether you're taking corn out of the food chain, so to speak.
That's been a real discussion among shoppers and economists.
Exactly right. And so what cellulosic ethanol does, and now it is nearly able to be feasible and be produced, and some of the groundbreaking research at SIU Edwardsville's National Corn to Ethanol Research Facility actually help provide, where you don't use the food source, you actually use the stalk in order to produce
the part we're not eating.
Or the part we're not eating, right? So those are the types of things. In addition, I'm still a believer in clean coal technology, that it can be done, it's being done in other countries and can be done efficiently and economically. And we just passed a law this year that was signed by the governor that would allow fracking in Illinois, which is the ability to extract oil and natural gas out of
pockets that normally wouldn't be usable.
Right, and they've been doing it in Pennsylvania, they've been doing it in North Dakota,
Ohio,
Texas as well. And so we in Illinois didn't have regulations in place to ensure, number one, that it's going to be environmentally safe, and number two, that it could be actually done and permitted in Illinois. So we passed a bill, and within the next 6 months, I believe, you're going to see in southeastern Illinois lots of testing going on, lots of activity by some of the largest natural gas companies and oil companies in the world, because we have under our ground, about 3,000 feet deep, believe it or not, we have they believe some of the richest oil and natural gas reserves that through this new technique will be able to be extracted. So hopefully where we see coal mines shuttered throughout this southern and central Illinois, we're going to see a lot of economic activity through fracking in an environmentally safe fashion that's going to put people to work and actually help us become energy independent in the long term. I'm
surprised how many people I run into who don't understand what impact this has had, like in North Dakota.
Right.
And the tremendous benefits to that part of the country that the production of new wealth has had in terms even of tax generation.
Well, some would say it's akin to the gold rush in many of these areas where there are so many workers that have to be brought in, that there's not housing, that they're actually living in tents and makeshift housing in order to be able to provide that.
Yes, I did some checking up in North Dakota. It's like houses or rent places that used to go for a couple $100 a month, $1,500, $2,000.
Right. Well, what you don't want to do though is you don't want to jump into this without learning from others' experiences. And if you look at some of the negative experiences that have happened either in North Dakota or Pennsylvania, there truly are some environmental concerns that have to be addressed. So we actually negotiated this bill with the Sierra Club and other environmental organizations. They signed off on the bill so that we will be really the most environmentally safe and secure fracking state in the nation. And you can still, we believe, and the people that were from the industry believe, that they can still do this and extract the oil and the natural gas and still make it economically feasible. So hopefully we're going to have a win-win. Now, what we don't know yet is, because they haven't been able to do it, whether or not the shale underneath the ground actually will support the type of type of mechanisms or the type of functions that have to be performed in order to successfully frack the natural gas and the oil.
Hence the experiments in southeast Illinois that you're talking about.
Which will begin right when some of these permits are being issued in the very near future.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll have to look at that early next year and see what they've discovered, and hopefully there might be a turning point there. Hopefully, I noticed in California they had a big tax increase because voters there in, I think, November of 2012 voted for a tax increase, and suddenly the state seemed to be more flush with cash. They weren't in a deficit position like they had been. And then some of the members of the legislature decide, oh, well, let's spend some more money.
Right.
Now, I hope that Illinois does not follow in their footsteps, that new monies actually go to old problems.
And I don't believe that we should be expending new resources until we're getting our old bills under control. When I say expending new resources, sure, there's going to be emergencies that we're going to have to deal with.
Yes.
There are, we would be wrong to not continue to move forward on infrastructure improvements that help create jobs and economic opportunity. Mm-hmm. I think we have to continue to make a commitment to education, because I believe that ensuring that we have a good public education system long term is going to create wealth and is going to move Illinois forward. So those really, I believe, non-discretionary items we should continue to move forward with. You know, I believe we'll see such economic opportunity and growth as a result of the new Mississippi River Bridge, which is, as we're sitting here today, they're putting in the last piece that's going to connect Illinois and Missouri.
I remember I mean, my first discussions go all the way back to Dale Clure in 1991.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Actually, one of the first things that I did when I first got elected was in 1991. I got elected in 90, took office in 91, was pass a resolution trying to move forward the issue of a new bridge across the Mississippi. Like I said earlier, there's been a lot of water under the bridge since then. So,
yeah. Well, speaking of transportation, and you alluded to this, but I want to be specific here. If we're going to be doing more work in southeastern Illinois, the roads they're pretty rural in that area. So if you're going to have a whole lot of heavy trucks or whatever, mm-hmm. heavier equipment, more traffic, you have to, as a planner, be planning to build better roads, thicker roads,
exactly.
roads that are more high speed perhaps, plus perhaps even pipelines would have to go in there in order to move product.
Well, I actually was with the CEO of Ameren, who is making plans. Right now, Ameren is looking at making plans in order to look at whether or not it's feasible for them to begin to build pipelines to those areas in order to transport the oil and natural gas, mostly natural gas for them. And when you talk about roads, what you're going to face, and they have faced in other states, is really a logistical nightmare, because water is so very important in this fracking process. Not only getting water to the place where they're actually, the mine where they're working, or the well where they're working, but also removing the water after the process and making sure that's environmentally
you can't
stored.
Just dump it back into
Right.
the Mississippi.
Exactly. So not only the product that comes out of the wells, but also the water that goes in and comes back out. You have to deal with, and a lot of these roads are small rural roads that are going to get you to the well site. Not all the wells are next to an interstate.
Right.
So those are issues that we're absolutely going to have to face, and I think we have a fee and taxing structure within the bill that's going to provide resources to local governments so they can begin to address those issues, as well as the state, so that they can address those issues.
Almost like a TDD.
Yep, and what's happened, I believe, is the companies who have done this in other areas, they've learned from their experience, and they understand that if they can't get to the well site, if they can't bring the water in and remove it, or the product in and remove it, that they're not going to be successful. So they've been supportive of a reasonable fee and taxing structure to help address many of those issues.
We got about 4 minutes left. Time goes by fast.
Yeah.
If there's an issue that we haven't discussed, now's the time to jump in.
Well, Lee, you talked about transportation, and for years I was the chairman of the Transportation Committee in the Illinois House, and when I went back to the Illinois House and decided to go back, I decided to still focus on that. So I'm the vice chairman of the Appropriations Committee that oversees all of the transportation spending in Illinois, as well as all the public safety funding in Illinois. But I also decided to become the chairman of the Labor and Commerce Committee. And I chose that for a couple of reasons. First of all, I believe that we in Illinois need to make it our #1 priority of economic development, job creation, doing it in a fair and reasonable manner. And it used to be called just the Labor Committee. Well, I asked it to be called the Labor and Commerce Committee so that we can expand the subject matter that we're going to look at to include jobs and economic development, as well as workers' rights and safety in the workplace. So my goal and my focus not only is to solve the budget problem, but let's do it in a long-term fashion, as I indicated before, that's going to put us on a road to economic recovery, wealth creation, jobs for our children, and long-term put Illinois in a position to compete not only whether it's on energy that we talked about, but other goods or technological advances, not only compete against Missouri and against Indiana and Wisconsin, Kentucky and Iowa, but also against the foreign economies that we're going to face as our children and the next generations continue to move forward in more of a global economy.
Before the crash, southwestern Illinois, this particular area was like, I think, the second fastest growing area outside of Chicago. Mm-hmm. Is that still the case?
I think I don't know that other places have grown. Maybe the suburbs of Chicago, I don't know that they've grown significantly.
But skip that 5-county area.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But outside of there, I believe we still are. I know we're the most populous area outside of Chicago, but because of some of the things that we've done, whether it's roads and bridges or schools or universities, and the infrastructure that goes along with that.
And the approximate position adjacent to St. Louis and to the Mississippi River.
But we've also done a lot of things in our area, quality of life issues, that I think are important to people. Whether it's great to have a road getting you to and from work faster, or transporting goods more easily, whether it's on the Mississippi or across the new bridge. But when you come home, you want to go on a bike trail and you want to enjoy parks and recreational activities, and you want to make sure that your children have a good quality education. So those are issues that, while I've been in the Illinois General Assembly, I've attempted to address, and we've done that to a large extent, I think, very well. There's still so many issues we have to face, whether they're budgetary or otherwise, that sometimes your head starts spinning. But I believe the basis of our infrastructure improvements have provided a lot of economic opportunity and growth potential for our area.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Time goes by fast here, but I really enjoyed it, and hopefully the audience did too. I will have you back for your next tour of duty here. But it's interesting to hear your perspective on this. I really do hope that you are, and that the legislature is successful in solving some of these really massive problems that Illinois, because you said people want to use those bike trails, but they don't want to see them shut down because everybody's broke.
I agree with you.
Got to go.
Okay.
To my audience, I want to thank you for being with us. I've been speaking with Jay Hoffman, state representative now from the 113th district. Also to let you know that this program is going to be uploaded to YouTube, so if you want to show other people this program, go to YouTube. Look up Conversation with Lee Presser. Thank you. Goodbye.